Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another book video. I'm in a vacant house today. This is our rental property and I am here doing showings all day long, trying to get this place rented. And I was just thinking how it's June 4th today and I haven't filmed my reading wrap-up video yet. And I was like, oh, when am I gonna have time to do it? And I was like, let me just try to do it today in between showings. So that's what I'm gonna do. This is gonna be my May reading wrap-up video. I would say that May was like the worst reading month I have had in a really long time. I only finished 2 physical books, or like 2 books on my Kindle that I like read with my eyes. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I had a lot of time to listen to books this month, so I still listened to a lot of books, but almost every month I always like actually read on my Kindle more than I listen. Like I will have like a few audiobooks, but it's mostly like ones that I actually read, and this month is the total opposite. I think I was just really busy and I just had kind of like a book slumpy month. So anyway, let's just start back at the beginning. The very first book I listened to this month was Stillhouse Lake, which is a thriller series that's on Kindle Unlimited, and the audiobooks are on Kindle Unlimited, so that's always really great. I listened to this one and I liked it so much that I immediately went on to the second one, which is called Killman Creek. I might continue the series on later, but I so far just did the first 2. I listened to them like completely back to back, so it's hard for me to like remember what happened in which book, but the first book is following a woman and her 2 kids who are the family of a serial killer. So this woman, I can't remember any of the character names, she was married to a serial killer and did not know that he was a serial killer. Like he was just really, really amazing at hiding it, and he got caught completely by chance. And when he got caught is when she found out that her husband was a murderer. Like she had no idea. So first of all, that completely destroyed her entire life, finding out that she was married to a killer. And then also nobody believed her that she didn't know. All of the families of the victims, like just people watching the story unfold, they were like, there's no way that you didn't know. And everybody was essentially like blaming her and making it seem like she was a part of it, and like maybe they were working together. And so her and her kids have just been like endlessly harassed online. They've basically been like running away and like trying to change their names, change their identities, trying to start over in different places to get away from all of these people who are like super against her and don't believe her story and really angry at what her husband has done. That's pretty much like the plot of the story, and it really goes crazy from there. Like she just feels like she can't trust anybody. And yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but I really, really liked the first 2 books. So yeah, I gave both of these 4 stars. After that, I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This has been on my TBR for years. Last year I read Circe by Madeline Miller, which is Greek mythology retelling. You know, I like kind of liked that one, but I just am not like a huge fan of Greek mythology. So I was really not like super excited to read The Song of Achilles, but I also had FOMO about it, and like so many people like call this book their favorite book of like all time. Sorry about the train. So yeah, I just wanted to know what all the fuss was about. And so I listened to this one as an audiobook, because if you are not super into like the Greek mythology and all of the like really big hard to pronounce names, I think that audio is the way to go for these Madeline Miller books. I have a hard time rating this one too. I gave it a 3, and I feel like maybe I could give it a 4. I feel like I can acknowledge that this writing is phenomenal. It's beautiful, like wonderful. The storytelling was fantastic. But if you don't like Greek mythology and you don't like, you know, this like kind of language, it's not quite as enjoyable, if you know what I mean. So I will say I liked this one so much more than Circe. It was a much easier story to follow, and it was just like all generally way more enjoyable for me than Circe. But yeah, I'd still put it like a 3 to 4 stars. It was good. Just like know what you're going into if you're going to read it. I will say I was crying at the end. I was crying at the end. So I feel like if a book can move you to tears, it's gotta be good. You're not crying over bad books, that's for sure. After that, I listened to another thriller. I listened to A Stranger in the Mirror by Liv Constantine. Liv Constantine is the author of The Last Mrs. Parrish, which is probably one of the only thrillers that I've ever given 5 stars, which I don't know if that's because it was like one of the first thrillers I read, and so I was just like extra thrilled, but I thought that book was so good. Maybe I need to do a reread and see if it was as good as I thought it was. I was really excited to read another book by her, and this one did not live up to that. I was a little bit disappointed. This one had a really interesting concept, and it started off so strong. It started off, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be another 5-star read. And then it ended on a 2. Like, it just went so downhill, went completely unhinged, like just far-fetched ridiculous, which sometimes I can like suspend my disbelief enough to like enjoy a ridiculous, like unbelievable story, but this wasn't one of them. It starts off with this girl named Addison who is engaged. She's about to get married, but she has basically no idea who she is. 2 years prior, she was found by some people walking on the side of the road with absolutely no memory of who she was, what she was doing, where she came from, her life before that moment, nothing. Like, all of her memories were completely gone. But then one day she's at this like art gallery showing, and this man walks in and is like, "You are my wife." And he pulls out his phone, shows her all of these photos of herself and her daughter that she didn't know she had. And he was like, "I have been looking for you for 2 years. What happened? Where did you go?" Like, and she is just so shocked because she did not know who she was. And she was like, "Oh my God, I have a kid that I didn't know about." And then she ends up going back home with him because that's her husband. He's got the marriage certificate, he's got everything. Then she goes back to her regular life with her daughter. And even though she can't remember them, she's trying to just settle in the best she can. And I will just end it there because I don't want to give anything away. And even though I didn't rate this book highly, I only give it a 2 out of 5. I feel like it still was entertaining and like still worth a read or worth a listen. There were parts of it where I was like, I know that that's not how amnesia works, but after that, I listened to Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden, another 2 out of 5, maybe like a 2.5-star read. I love Frida McFadden's books, even though I never rate them very high. I feel like she just is really good at writing a very, very entertaining story. This one is about Quinn, who at the very beginning of the book opens up on a scene where she just killed her husband, her abusive husband. Basically, she's standing in her kitchen weighing her options. She's like, what am I gonna do? I just stabbed my husband to death, trying to figure out like exactly what to do. And she decides that she is going to make a run for it instead of just calling the police and being like, I'm a victim of domestic violence and I killed my husband in self-defense. She's like, nah, I'm gonna run. So she gets cleaned up, gets in the car, takes off, and then it's in the middle of a freaking snowstorm. So she has to like pull off in this really random area and stay at this tiny dilapidated motel where everybody in the hotel is like very suspicious, and then more weird stuff starts happening. And I'll leave it at that. Like the last book I was talking about, it's like, it doesn't have to be an amazing masterpiece of a book for it to be really entertaining, you know? I don't think this book was a work of art or amazing, but it was really entertaining, and the twists at the end were pretty good. So probably like a 2.5 out of 5 on that one. After that, I listened to Georgie All Along, which is a romance book. And I usually try not to listen to romance on audio because I feel like it makes it like extra cheesy, and I prefer to like read it myself instead. But I just wanted to take a break from thrillers. Also, this was the pick for one of the book clubs that I'm in for this month. So Georgie, she's like a personal assistant to this woman in California who then decides that she is gonna like move away and doesn't need a personal assistant anymore. And so then Georgie has like no idea what she wants to do with her own life or where she wants to live. So she ends up going back home to her hometown to stay with her parents for a little while she kind of figures out what she's gonna do next. Her parents were like out of town on a really long trip, and they were like, you can go house sit and stay at our house. But when she gets to her house to house sit, somebody else is already house sitting there because her parents also told this other guy that he could stay at their house while his house was having some renovations done. A recipe for romance, you know? Generally, I felt like this was like a very average kind of rom-com, but it was really cute and I did really enjoy it. You got both of their point of views, which I liked, especially because the main male character in this one was, what's that called? Like a little bit like self-loathing, and like on the outside he looked like very serious and cranky, but was like kind of like swooning for her in his head. And I love like reading main male characters like that. So that was super cute. I did like it. I was entertained. I listened to it pretty quickly. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Then I listened to another Frida McFadden. I listened to Ward D, which I think this is her newest release. It was her typical Frida McFadden style of like super twisty, super ridiculous, like very unrealistic, but like very entertaining. This is about a medical student named Amy. She's going through her training, and part of that is having to do like shifts on Ward D. It's a night shift on the psychiatric ward, which is called Ward D, and basically like everybody is locked inside this ward with a code because it's like where all the very serious psychiatric patients are. So she's super scared, doesn't want to do it. She's just like heard horror stories about people having to do this shift. I've heard a lot of negative criticism on this one, like reading the reviews and listening to other people's thoughts about how like the language that she uses dealing with like psychiatric patients was not nice. It was just definitely like not the kind of language you use in this day and age. So yeah, I don't know. I wasn't super offended by that, but I know that other people were. I felt like this main character was another one of just like the dumbest main characters ever. That's like another like Frida McFadden classic, is like super dumb female main character. Yeah, this girl was ridiculous, but it was entertaining. It was twisty. The twists kept coming and they were good. I gave that one a 3 out of 5. After that, I finished one of the 2 physical books that I read this month, which was The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. I actually tried to read this book last year and I ended up DNFing it because I was so bored. Then I saw Steph Bower talking about it and she was like raving about it, and I was like, okay, maybe I just need to give it like a better shot. So I tried again, and it's hard because like the more I think about it now, I'm like, okay, like it was kind of good, but it just dragged on and on and on, and it was boring. The first 75% is just so boring, felt like a chore to read, and then the last 25%, when it all came together and like the plot twist and everything, it was so good, but like it wasn't worth getting through that first 75% to get there, in my opinion. But more on that later. I'm sorry about the rain sounds. I'm in the car now waiting to pick up some lunch, but back to my thoughts about The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This book follows 3 different women who are all dating the same man. And the story starts off by them all being stood up by him on Valentine's Day. You meet all 3 of them as they're like planning their date and everything with him. And then after they get stood up, and then, you know, kind of like how things go after that. It was like a really interesting idea. I was really impressed with the end of the book and how it did all come together. It was definitely a really shocking plot twist that I did not see coming, and so that part was like really great, but it just, I mean, it dragged so hard, and I think it took me almost the whole month to finish it because it just like could not hold my attention. So if it sounds interesting, give it a shot. I know that it does have some really rave reviews, so maybe it was just me. I ended up rating this one a 2 out of 5. It wasn't for me, but I don't want that to like put you off too hard, if you know what I mean. After that, I listened to another audiobook, but this one is like, if you were ever gonna listen to an audiobook, this is the one. This is called Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. This book is about audiobook narrators. The main character in the story is an audiobook narrator, and she ends up doing a project with another audiobook narrator who is like really a popular and mysterious male romance audiobook narrator. And also, the woman who wrote this book is an actual audiobook narrator. Like, that is her job. She has narrated over 500 books, and I've listened to so many of the books that she has narrated. And so to hear her narrating her own story, talking about audiobook narrators, I know this is like me saying narrator 1,000 times. It was just such a fun listen. There were so many accents that they were doing in this book. Like, I just feel like you have to listen to this to get like the full experience. My sister is actually the one who recommended this book to me, and she read it on her Kindle, and I was like, girl, what are you doing? You gotta like listen to this one. It was made to be an audiobook, you know? I really liked this one. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I thought that the like romance part of it was really good, but also there was just a lot of depth to the story. The female main character used to be an actress, and she ended up getting in an accident that damaged the way that she looked. Watching her grieve that and deal with that, and then the mystery behind the other audiobook narrator, there was just a lot going on in this book, and I really enjoyed it. So add that one to your list, listen to it. I have to go pick up my food, so I will finish talking about the last 3 books in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Let's talk about the last 3 books of the month, starting with Dance of Thieves. I read Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves this month, and it was a journey. Dance of Thieves was the second actual book that I read with my eyeballs this month, and kind of like The No-Show, it took me all month. I'm pretty sure it took me 26 days to finish this book. Once again, I don't know if it was the slump or if the book just dragged. It's hard because this is a fantasy book and it's the first in a duet. There's just so much world building and like character introduction, and there's a lot of info dumping that needs to go into a fantasy series or into like a fantasy book. And so sometimes the first one can really feel like a chore to read because, you know, you got a lot to learn to get into the world. It's also young adult, which is very hit or miss for me. Like sometimes I love it, sometimes I like really don't like it. This one, like I didn't really mind, but there were a few moments where it was just like so young that it felt like almost kind of hard to read and just like a little bit cringy when like the characters are like making like doing it jokes and you're like, ooh, I'm reading a book for a 16-year-old and I'm a 30-year-old woman. So I used Libby for this book and I had to renew my borrow, what is it called when you check out a library book? I ran out of time and had to renew and check it out again. Like that's how long it took me to read it, and I've never had to do that before in my life because you can check out a book for 21 days and I could not finish it in time. Like that's, I feel like that really says something. It's kind of hard to describe because it is fantasy, and so it's set in this world where there are all of these like different kingdoms, and the main character in this one, Kazi, is a like soldier for the queen of one of these kingdoms or all of them. I still unsure. And growing up, Kazi was an orphan who lived alone and had to basically learn how to steal to get by. So she is a really, really talented thief. And like that is kind of like her skill, is that she is like a really good pickpocket. Like she knows how to be sneaky, she knows how to get what she needs. And so that makes her like a really valuable asset to this queen who like needs her to acquire things for her or whatnot. So the queen sends her to this place because she is looking for something that is missing, and she thinks that it is over in this other place. The leader of that city just passed away and his son just stepped up to like take over leadership role. It's so hard for me to describe, I don't know why. Oh, and his name is Jace. And so she's got to go figure out a way to steal something from under Jace's nose. Obviously, they're just set up to fall in love. There was a lot of politics in this book. Like I said, a lot of world building, a lot of info dumping and character introductions that just made it really hard to get through. But I did still enjoy it. There was a lot of parts of it that were super enjoyable. Yeah, it kind of went up and down of just being like really boring and then really exciting and then really boring. But generally, I give it a 3 out of 5. I thought that it was worth the read still. After I finished it, I was like, I don't really know if I want to read the second one, but because I knew that there was only 2 and I already did all of the hard work of reading the first one and like building the world and getting to know everybody, I was like, well, let me just try. And so I decided to listen to the second one as an audiobook to make it a little bit easier. And I blew through the audiobook. It's so funny that the first one took me like 27 days to finish and the second one took me maybe 2. This one was so good. The first book walked so this book could run. By the time we get to the second book, you know everyone, you know the world, you know the situation. So all that was left was all of the action and the fun, and it was really, really good. I can't tell you too much about what this one is about without spoiling the first one, but I mean, this one was action packed. It was a really fun book. It definitely made the chore of reading the first one worth it. And I feel like 2 was such a good number for a series like this or a duet. It's like, I wish more authors would do that. Just keep it simple. It doesn't have to be 15 books long, you know, like the 2 was so great and it was just, I really liked it. I gave the second one a 5 out of 5, which I haven't given very many 5s so far this year, so that really says something. If I could do it again, I would have listened to the first one as an audiobook. I think that would have made it way easier to get through. And then the very last book that I read this month was Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I have been dying to read this book since I read When in Rome a couple of months ago. When in Rome is like probably one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. And this is the second book in that series. They're like interconnected standalones, so you don't have to read that one, but I think it makes a better experience if you read them in order. I was really thinking that this one was gonna be a 5-star read for me because I love the setting of these books. I loved the first one so much. And this one just didn't quite work for me as well as the first one. I only gave this one a 3 out of 5. This one is about Annie and Will. Annie is like the youngest baby sister of her family. Everybody treats her like a delicate little baby. They call her Angel Annie. She feels kind of like trapped by everybody's assumptions about who she is. And Will is the bodyguard of Amelia in the first book. He's like a notorious player, bad boy. He's got tattoos. He wears all black. He's very cool. And they end up in this situation where he is her dating coach to try to help her get better at dating and feel confident talking to men, because she's had a really hard time meeting men because she is a little bit like introverted. It was cute and I enjoyed it, but like it just didn't have the like Sarah Adams magic that I feel a lot of times when I read her books. I love her writing and this one was good, but it just didn't have that extra sprinkle, you know? Also, the main male character in this one has the thing where he's like damaged and I'm never gonna fall in love, I'm never gonna get married, like, I don't know. And it just felt like overdone for me and like a little bit silly, and I like couldn't care about him. And then also Annie is supposed to be this almost 30-year-old virgin who's just never been able to have a boyfriend or whatever. And I'm like, that's just, I'm sure that maybe that happens sometimes in real life, but I'm like, how common is it that this like apparently like stunning, drop dead gorgeous girl has never had a boyfriend and is still a virgin at 30 years old? Like it felt a little silly to me. I don't know. So it just fell a little flat. It was very average for me. Like I said, a 3 out of 5, but also it has so many amazing reviews. So don't let my review deter you from trying it, because I do love Sarah Adams. Okay, those are all of the books I read this month. That was my whole messy May reading wrap up. If you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, leave your thoughts on them in the comments so I can see what you guys thought. Or if you have any books that you think I should add to my TBR, let me know. But that's it for this video. So don't forget to follow me on Instagram and subscribe. Add me as a friend on Goodreads too, because I love to have you guys on my Goodreads. And that is it for this video. So I will see you guys all in my next one.